Gators Breakdown episode 68 is ready to go. Justin Fields decommits from Penn State, and the Florida Gators are in hot pursuit of the five-star quarterback. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And joining me tonight from 24/7 Sports, GatorBait.net, is Blake Alderman. And you can find Blake on Twitter at Blake_Alderman. Blake, I believe things just ramped up for you a little bit, my friend, with this Justin Fields news.
Yeah, no, the fun's just getting started, man.
You're right. It is fun. Quarterback has been a hot topic with Malik Zaire, Felipe Franks, and now kind of this Justin Fields thing. As I've always said, and it's a moniker I go by, there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
Absolutely. No, that's for sure. You think you're going to have a quiet day. It's just like I said to a couple of the guys, the people on the Gator beat when we were at the 7-on-7 tournament. It's pretty much, a normal visitor list as far as just no surprises really. Everyone that was there was kind of expected to be there. And then, all of a sudden, Randy Russell, my former Miami commit, walks out, and it's like, oh, you knew it was going to get weird eventually. Now it's weird. So
It is weird. Before we dive into what Justin Fields and what that means for Florida, remember you can find all your Gators Breakdown episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Just search on those sites and get the links by following us on Twitter at Gators Breakdown, and on Facebook, search Gators Breakdown there. Also, share the show if you like it, leave a review, and rate on iTunes. So, Blake, how did we get to this point with Justin Fields, and why do you feel now was the time for him to announce his decommitment from Penn State? We even heard as recent as this past weekend at the Elite 11 that he was solid to Penn State. What happened and why now?
I think it's one of those things that if you've kind of followed just the updates that we've had on the network that, Penn State is a school that obviously did a good job getting him on board as far as just relationships. I believe his mom has some family up there in the area. That's where kind of where the draw was there. So, he's always said, he's solid at Penn State, but he's also continued to talk to, 5 or 6 schools at one point. There's just a bunch of schools that have continued to, keep in touch with Justin. So, I think that it's not a big surprise to see the decommitment happen if you've kind of just followed the tea leaves. So, there's been even some rumors of him possibly taking some secret visits under the table. It's just one of those things that, he hasn't confirmed it. It's something that has, rumors have been flying around with him for a while. So, I think now just all these things coming to a head, I think he wanted to just, kind of take a step back, open things back up, and really kind of evaluate things. And, I think in the back of every recruit's head is, they don't want the headline of an article to be, so-and-so commit visits this school. It's just, whether it be, Justin Fields visits Florida, Justin Fields does this, not Penn State commit visits this school, plot twist, so I think that there's a lot of pressure on a young man like that. So, I think him, kind of stepping away and reevaluating his options, I think is probably really the best move for him because that's kind of what he's been doing really for quite a while now.
Yeah, we kind of knew, even through his interviews, that this summer was going to be busy for him. He kind of admitted he was going to take some trips to Florida and Florida State and maybe Auburn and how those go. Do you think he just wanted to why he's visiting those schools, not necessarily be a commitment to Penn State?
I think so. I think he, really, I've always heard that there was a little bit of interest in staying closer to the Southeast. Obviously, the SEC it's hard for some of these kids to say no whenever you have, SEC schools like that, like Florida, every coach is hitting you up, and I'm sure Auburn and Florida State and Georgia and, those schools like that, I'm sure they're doing the same thing. So, I think that it's just a lot of pressure on him. I think he wanted to take some visits. I think that he wasn't expecting – I think every kid kind of expects schools to still come after you, but I don't think he was expecting things to be quite like that. So, I think – like I said, he just, kind of wanted to go back and reevaluate things and really take a look at these schools and not be tied down to some program or telling coaches, yes, I'm solid, I'm coming, but I'm taking all these other visits. I'm sure it just kind of puts a bind on both parties. And, I think it was probably the best way to do that.
How do you think he goes about determining his next school and when we might have that decision? Is it still on the timeline of end of summer before football season starts, or does this play out to maybe a winter commitment? Because and then last we had heard maybe he was even thinking about not early enrolling anymore out of school. Does this play out for a while, or do we think we get another decision pretty soon?
It's really a personal opinion with me. I don't think it goes past the summer.
Okay.
He hasn't really given a definite timeline at all. He is not early enrolling though. He told me that he wanted to play baseball his senior year. That's his plan. So
okay.
Enrollee is not on the table. That I do know. But I think the thing with him now is he wants to take these visits in the summer. Personally, I think Florida and Auburn are really the main two competitors here. I think Florida State and Georgia are maybe those second-tier schools, if you want to call them that. Georgia obviously has his sister playing softball there. There's a tie there. Florida State, he thinks Jimbo is a quarterback guy. There are some interest there. But really, Florida and Auburn really seem to be the biggest players there. Florida has just been coming at him so hard. I think there's intrigue on his side of, a little bit better options and, for him to play early. Florida has, here we still are, a bunch of unproven young guys in there that it's easy to say, well, look what we have when there's not really an answer for them. So, it kind of lets the kid formulate his own opinion of, Florida doesn't have a proven guy. So I think that has always been the biggest thing. Auburn, he grew up a big fan of Auburn. He's always been a fan there. Cam Newton is the 7-on-7 coach. He's been in his ear a little bit of just about Auburn and stuff. So I really think it's Florida and Auburn battling it out there. Georgia's got the sister there, so I don't think you can count them out. But, I think it's going to be a battle, man. I'll tell you that. It's going to be a battle this summer for him.
Yeah, and if playing time is a big deal, I tell you what, it would be tough to see him go to Georgia with Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason there, and but like you said, the sister going there, that may be a pull there, and we'll see. I
just don't think family things are ever anything to ever really count out in recruiting. It's one of those wild cards in the process when you have family involved in there like that.
Yeah, and it's really close to home, so it's even closer to. Auburn's pretty close as well. So
I think Auburn's actually. Mileage-wise, I think it's actually
closer. Yeah, Kennesaw, so I guess so. It would be. And according to what Stidham does, at Auburn, this may be his one and only. He may be a one and done at Auburn. So
that's the thing that really where Justin's also got a lot of intrigue too, because as far as what Auburn obviously thinks is that they think Stidham's going to come out and ball out, and there's a chance he could leave. And that's kind of what they have for Justin, and he's definitely listening to that. He knows that. He knows that Auburn has a lot of young receivers returning. So it is an interesting pitch for him, and I think that's why Auburn is really has tightened this race with Florida.
We've seen the momentum with 2019 class and 2018, our big commit last week, but Amari Burney. But how big of a get would Justin Fields be for Jim McElwain?
Oh man, that can take your class from, I think Florida always is considered to be a top 10 class. Usually they're somewhere close to that usually when it comes time to final recruiting rankings. But I think a guy like Justin Fields really puts your class to that elite level because you have that bell cow. You have that 5-star quarterback that everyone can talk about, build around this, it's like you build it, he will come, So I think that's really that can take Florida's class to be, from, top 10 to, top 5, up there with, the elites in this class because, like I said, you bring in a big weapon like that and a lot of guys are going to notice.
I agree. A couple of questions, Blake, that I got from Twitter here. Jack Jr., Harold, a guy that I know, he wants to know, should hopes be tempered with Justin Fields? Are Florida fans getting their hopes up a little too much here?
I don't think so. I think that in the end, I think if a kid is seriously looking at your school and he doesn't pick, I think there's always a little bit of letdown by fans. But, I don't think that, there should be tempered expectations. I think Florida is squarely in this. I think that they're, like I said, 1 or 2. I think they have an edge, but I think Auburn has really closed it in there, and I think it's really tight. So, I think these are battles that, it's what you hear it kind of floated around, but this really is a guy that could change McElwain's whole perception of his recruiting. That could be that fork in the road to where if you land this guy, that could be a program changing guy. A guy like Justin Fields can. I think I saw an article today that he could be the biggest quarterback recruit since Tim Tebow, and I think that's definitely fair to say. Bringing in a big time guy like that, I think that he can really take this class to a whole nother level. And I think that when you have a guy like that, you should be excited about that. I think you should be excited about the possibility of laying that when you're squarely in the mix for it, that a guy that, I think that if Florida can get him on campus, and really start to kind of sell the family here, because I think Justin has interest in Florida, but, you always want to get the family on board and stuff. I think that Florida can, really get this kid. I think that, he's going to be a big-time guy, and I think that you should be excited, the chance of getting a 5-star quarterback like that.
Yeah, I was kind of asked this morning, too, about what this would mean for Florida, and somebody asked, how big could it be? And I kind of mentioned myself, what Tebow did for that 2006 class to kind of just bring that whole class together and kind of be the magnet to that class. I really think Fields is in that same category, and especially because just Florida in that quarterback position, as down as it has been, and the desperate need for a quarterback, I really just think he can be a magnet for other recruits.
Sure. And, you see that, Justin's obviously tweeted, every kid now, they tweet all the, the stuff in there. But when you see so many big time recruits that are retweeting it and quote tweeting it and all this stuff, I think that's the kind of thing that speaks to me. When you have so many big time recruits like that notice this, where's Justin going? The little eye emojis and, all that, I think that, he's a guy that's going to carry weight in this class for sure.
Yeah, and speaking along that lines, are there a couple commits? I got a couple questions about that. A couple commits that are can Florida fans keep their eye on now that if Justin Fields comes in the fold that he could help with?
None that off the top of my head, that really think. I think that it really more than anything helps a lot of these guys that really already have a lot of interest in Florida. I think that they're the odds-on favorites for guys like Jacob Copeland, William Barnes, guys like that. But I think if you bring in a top quarterback like that, it could really change it from where these guys that want to wait on a decision that they could move at their timeline. They could go ahead and jump on board. Let's build this thing. Let's do this. A guy like William Barnes, I think, is going to eventually end up at Florida, but he wants to wait and, decide sometime later. Obviously, Florida has to continue to do their work, but, I think if you get a guy like that behind you in your class, I think it brings the excitement, it brings the buzz to the class, and it gets some of these guys to feel a little bit more comfortable pulling the trigger. So I think that more than anything is really the big thing. As far as targets outside of it, none that really come to my head, off the top of my head. I'd have to kind of look and see things.
Right.
But I really do think, those targets that Florida really wants, I think that it, can definitely sway them.
All right, but let's go be a little bit on Justin Fields there. Got kind of just a couple generic questions that I'm sure you can handle here. Amari Burney commits last week. Biggest commitment so far for this 2018 class. Is he the commit that gets this 2018 class kickstarted?
I think so. And, I think it kind of shows that now. He's on board now. There hasn't been a guy really in this class that has been that, I always call it the Nick Washington Award, that, that big-time recruiter, that guy that's going to go out and be in the ear of guys. And Amari has done that. When I've asked him at his commitment ceremony, I was like, well, who's the first guy you're going after? And at the drop of a hat, he was like, Jacob Copeland. Every time I see him, he's wearing Gator stuff. I need him to be a Gator with me. So, I think that him doing that is going to kind of get people to be a little more vocal in this class, to kind of go out and start going after guys. And you see the 19 class having some success. I think even if you add those guys just into the momentum, it really kind of builds that, that momentum up. And even if it's not the 18 class, these 2019 guys are really pretty vocal about recruiting guys for 2018 too, so I think that's just more guys in your ear about that. And I think with the summer kind of starting, Amari really kind of doing that like that last day of school and kind of transitioning into the summer months when there's going to be a lot of guys on campus, a lot of guys coming to camp and watch camp and, all of this, that, and the other. And I think that that's going to kind of help as we transition into these big busy months where there's guys coming up to see the campus and see the coaches.
Yeah, for sure. 2019, I kind of asked you the similar question last time you were on the podcast. Is it just as simple as the new coaches are paying off and Jim McElwain finally has some relationships built throughout the state? Because this is already a Florida-heavy class, the state of Florida-heavy class.
Sure. I think it is it's a little bit of both. I think it's the coaches coming through, the two guys at South Dade, they're really close with Corey Bell. I think that's where you see him coming through. Dunmore, close with Dixon, but also really close with Juwan Sider, who recruits that area too. I think that these coaches now are really showing – they're kind of flexing their muscles, on the 2019 class, and I think that that's really helping there. And it's like, the relationships that Mac and the other coaches have built with these guys combined with these coaches like Bell and Sider, who also had relationships with these other guys now. But, when you have that Florida logo on there, no diss to West Virginia or any of those other schools. But, that carries a little bit more weight when you walk into a school like, Dunmore School with that Gator logo on there compared to the West Virginia logo. I think that really has helped also too. Those big time coaches getting those jobs and chances to do that with kids that they've already built relationships with.
For sure. Blake, before I let you go, it's been the hot topic of the last week or so. What's your thoughts on Malik Zaire coming to Florida? What it may mean for Felipe Franks? And is it a good addition? To Florida? Is it more than just depth? Is it him coming in and taking a job from Felipe Franks? Is it hurting Felipe Franks? Is Malik Zaire a good move for this Gator coaching staff?
Absolutely. I think that if you're a coach and you're not doing everything you can possibly do to bring in somebody that could possibly help your team, I don't think you're doing your job. And I think that's what McElwain did. And if Zaire takes Frank's job, if that's what you want to call it, then Franks wasn't doing his job to hold on to that, if that makes sense. If Franks is the guy, he needs to show that he's the guy, and he needs to be the guy that shows he's the starter. But I also think too that in the last couple of years, name me a season that Florida's gone through a season with one quarterback. I think that dynamic comes into it too. If something happens to Frank, knock on wood, nothing like that. But it's good to have that option there, and it's also good to have a guy that can run too. I think that all those things really it's kind of a no-brainer for me. You bring in a guy, it's like you'd be mad about bringing somebody in that could help the program. That's my thought. If you're a head coach, that you should be doing that. That's your job.
Yeah, that's
developing these guys.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I think about it too. Zaire, I wasn't a fan at first. It was a couple months ago when it first started ramping up. I was kind of on the Felipe Franks train, I guess you could say. But the more I think about it, of course, you throw everything you have at this quarterback position until you get it fixed. So at the very least, this does nothing but make the quarterback room better.
Absolutely, and I think that's. You can't go wrong with that, And if Franks is the guy, then I think that Mac would trot him out there as a starter if Franks is the guy. And if he's not, then he must just not have been doing the job to get that starting spot. If Zaire can come in without participating in spring ball and learn the offense that fast, I think that speaks to me about maybe where Franks is at, mentally with the game. Although I think he has made a lot of leaps and bounds from year one to year two.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean he won't eventually be ready.
Sure, that doesn't mean anything. It's just that kind of tinkering things. And like I said, if you can bring a guy in that's going to help your program, you should be doing that.
Sounds good. Blake, man, thanks for joining me on short notice. I know when this Fields news came out, I reached out to you. You were the first one I thought of to get some more Fields thoughts out there. So for the short notice, thanks for joining me, man.
Oh yeah, anytime, man. 24/7. We've kept the pulse of the Justin Fields recruitment, and I'm definitely glad to come on and talk about it because we've definitely been I feel like we've been involved with this recruitment, just covering it and just making sure we had every twist and turn.
For sure. You can find all of our me and Bill. We're on 24/7 message board. Of course, Blake, Luke, and Thomas do a great job there. So thanks to those guys for letting us share our podcast on the message board there. But Blake, thanks again for having us at Gator Bait.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right. So this is David Waters here on Gators Breakdown for Blake Alderman. Thanks for listening to this episode where we talked Justin Fields decommitting from Penn State and the Gators in hot pursuit of the big-time quarterback. See you guys later.